The world changed in an instant, when every human suddenly gained the ability to hear thoughts. The unfiltered internal monologues of everyone around them began echoing loudly in the crowded public spaces. The initial chaos was absolute as the social veneer of civilization crumbled under brutal, sudden honesty. In elevators, strangers were forced to confront the petty grievances and bizarre non-sequiturs of their neighbors. One man wondered if he left the stove on, while his neighbor contemplated his own boredom. Classrooms quickly turned into theaters of the absurd as students and teachers broadcasted their wandering minds. A bored student daydreamed about lunch, while the teacher silently critiqued the school board's latest policy. Mothers became omniscient detectives, instantly identifying guilty children who could no longer hide their mischievous secrets. A young boy thought about the broken vase while his mother heard the confession clearly aloud. Relationships faced the ultimate test as partners heard hidden insecurities and white lies kept for years. A husband worried about his thinning hair while his wife silently judged his poor fashion choices. The global atmosphere shifted from polite social interaction to a raw, unfiltered comedy of human errors. No secret was safe anymore, as every hidden thought became a loud and chaotic public broadcast. The collective human consciousness became a hilariously transparent experience for every single living person on Earth. People walked down the busy city streets, bombarded by the random, noisy internal chatter of strangers. A businessman obsessed over a missed promotion while the woman beside him hummed a catchy tune. The sheer volume of human thought created an overwhelming, constant hum that filled the urban air. Every person realized their private sanctuary of the mind had been permanently breached by this phenomenon. Arguments erupted in cafes as people reacted to the unfiltered opinions they were never meant to. A barista thought about quitting her job while the customer complained about the expensive latte price. The social mask of politeness dissolved, leaving behind a world of raw, exposed, and vulnerable individuals. Children giggled at the strange, nonsensical thoughts of adults who were trying to remain very serious. The office environment became a minefield of accidental insults and sudden, uncomfortable realizations about coworkers' lives. A manager wondered why his team was so slow, while the team critiqued his management style. Every secret, from the smallest white lie to the deepest regret, was now common public knowledge. The sheer absurdity of the situation caused some to laugh, while others wept in total despair. Strangers in the subway stared at each other, hearing the same anxieties about the morning commute. The barrier between the inner self and the outer world had vanished into thin, noisy air. It was as if the entire planet had suddenly been plugged into a single, massive amplifier. Every stray thought, every fleeting judgment, and every random memory was now audible to everyone nearby. The quiet dignity of solitude was replaced by a cacophony of voices that never truly stopped. People tried to cover their ears, but the thoughts were not sound. They were direct mental. The mental transmissions were persistent, invasive, and impossible to ignore in the middle of the day. A politician on television struggled to keep his thoughts aligned with his carefully crafted public speech. The audience heard his doubt, his greed, and his exhaustion, shattering his carefully constructed political image. Every public figure became a victim of their own internal monologue, exposed before the entire world. The truth, once hidden behind smiles and handshakes, was now the only currency in the market. Lies became impossible to maintain when the liar's own mind betrayed them with the actual truth. The chaos was not just auditory. It was a fundamental shift in how humanity perceived reality. Every interaction became a high-stakes negotiation of honesty, with no room left for polite, empty gestures. The world was suddenly a very small place, where everyone knew exactly what everyone else thought. It was a strange, terrifying, and oddly liberating moment for the entire human race to experience. The initial panic was a natural reaction to the sudden loss of the internal mental boundary. As the hours passed, the noise began to feel like a strange, new, and permanent soundtrack. People began to realize that the thoughts of others were often just as strange as theirs. The realization that everyone was equally flawed provided a strange, unexpected comfort to the confused masses. The chaos was absolute, yet it was also the most honest moment in all human history. Every person was now a participant in a global conversation that had no beginning or end. The veneer of civilization had crumbled, but something more authentic was beginning to take its place. The world was no longer a collection of strangers, but a single, interconnected, and noisy mind. Every thought was a thread in a giant, chaotic tapestry of human experience and shared emotion. The initial shock began to fade, replaced by a weary acceptance of this new, loud reality. People started to navigate the world with a new awareness of the thoughts of their neighbors. The comedy of errors continued, but it was now a shared experience among all living people. No one was alone in their head anymore, and that changed everything about how life worked. The unfiltered truth was the new standard, and there was no going back to the past. Every secret was now a public fact, and the world adjusted to this strange new transparency. Humanity stood on the precipice of a new era defined by total and complete mental honesty. The loud, chaotic, and transparent experience was just the beginning of a much larger global change. The day thoughts became audible was the day the world finally learned to truly hear itself. As the initial panic faded into the background, a strange, newfound sense of communal empathy emerged. Workplaces transformed into efficient, albeit awkward, environments where managers and employees shared their mutual confusion daily. Everyone openly voiced their secret desires for shorter meetings, stripping away the old corporate professional facade. The internet became a vast playground of radical transparency, stripping influencers of their carefully curated personas. Every polished post was suddenly exposed, revealing the mundane reality hidden behind the once perfect images. People realized that their most embarrassing anxieties were not unique burdens they carried in total isolation. Forgetting why they entered a room became a shared joke, echoing across the minds of millions. Obsessing over a cringeworthy memory from a decade ago proved to be a truly universal experience. While the loss of absolute privacy was profound, the world became unexpectedly and refreshingly genuine today. Humanity learned that despite the constant stream of weird and random thoughts, we were all struggling. We were all navigating the same complex human condition, bound together by our collective mental noise. By the end of the transition, the world had become a much funnier and honest place. Silence was no longer a mask for deception, as every mind broadcasted its own unique truth. Neighbors walked past each other, no longer needing to guess the hidden intentions of their peers. The constant chatter created a symphony of human experience, messy and loud, but deeply, undeniably real. Strangers in the subway found themselves laughing at the shared absurdity of their own wandering minds. The social barriers that once divided us crumbled, replaced by a raw and unfiltered human connection. Teachers and students found common ground in their mutual distraction, turning classrooms into collaborative, honest spaces. Mothers and children moved past the need for secrets, finding peace in their newfound mental clarity. Partners discovered that their hidden insecurities were often mirrored by the very people they loved most. The comedy of errors continued, but it was now a shared performance rather than a struggle. Every person realized that their inner monologue was just one voice in a vast global choir. The weight of pretending to be perfect lifted, leaving behind a lighter, more authentic social landscape. We were no longer isolated islands of thought, but a connected web of shared human consciousness. The fear of being judged vanished when everyone realized that everyone else was equally flawed inside. Small, petty grievances were aired and immediately forgotten, clearing the air for more meaningful daily interactions. The world had finally stopped performing for an audience and started living for the present moment. Even the most bizarre non-sequiturs were met with nods of recognition rather than shock or judgment. Life became a transparent journey, where the truth was the only currency that truly mattered anymore. In this new reality, humanity finally found the comfort of knowing that we are never alone. Relationships, once shrouded in polite mystery, were now laid bare under the bright light of honesty. A girl asked her boyfriend what he loved about her, bracing for a rehearsed, sweet response. He opened his mouth to speak, but his mind betrayed him with a frantic internal warning. He thought, "This is a trap. This is definitely a trap," while his heart raced with anxiety. He finally said, "Your personality," but she heard the rest of his thoughts echoing, clearly aloud. She heard him add, "And the pizza you order," causing them both to burst into genuine laughter. On first dates, the heavy silence became impossible to maintain as thoughts screamed across the table. One person wondered why they kept dropping their fork, while the other questioned their own blinking. They sat there, paralyzed by the sudden realization that their internal monologues were being broadcasted everywhere. "Am I sitting weird?" one thought, while the other wondered if they looked nervous or bored. Then they accidentally heard each other's thoughts, and the tension broke into a wave of giggles. Meanwhile, the waiter stood nearby, thinking, "Please leave, my legs hurt," adding to the absurdity. The office environment, once a place of structured professional decorum, collapsed into a chaotic, honest circus. The boss walked in, offering a cheery good morning, but the team's thoughts were entirely different. Every employee thought at the exact same time, how many days until payday, creating a mental hum. During long, tedious meetings, the manager presented a plan that seemed to drag on for hours. Everyone else was thinking, "Please get to the point," while checking the clock on the wall. Then, suddenly, they heard the manager's own thoughts, which were just as confused as their own. The manager thought, "I honestly don't understand this presentation either," revealing the shared lack of direction. Job interviews became brutally honest, stripping away the rehearsed lies that usually defined the hiring process. The interviewer asked why the candidate wanted to work there, expecting a polished, corporate-approved answer. The candidate's thoughts were loud and clear, echoing, "Because rent is terrifying," for all to hear. The internet, once a place of curated perfection, became the greatest comedy show the world ever saw. Influencers posted selfies with captions like, "Just woke up like this," projecting an image of ease. But their thoughts betrayed them, admitting that took 2 hours and 5 filters to get right. People posted fancy food pictures while secretly thinking, "I took the photo and then ate noodles." Comments online became brutally honest, replacing polite pleasantries with the raw truth of the human mind. Instead of saying, "Interesting opinion," people thought, "I understood nothing, but I don't want to argue." The biggest disaster was texting, where someone typed, "Ha ha 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 ha," while thinking, "I didn't laugh even once." The digital world became a mirror of our true selves, reflecting the humor in our daily deceptions.